We already know how to send new messages to the bot, and we are already getting a response back with the ID of the message that we sent. Now, the only thing that is missing, of course, not regarding the creation of the actual chat, the interface. All we currently have is an entry and a button, but not regarding this yet. All we have to do is get the responses from the bot. So during this lecture, we're going to focus on knowing how is it that we're going to be able to read those responses back. This is going to have to do with something that we receive in the conversation right after we create it. We're currently only using the conversation ID. But in our conversation property, we already have the token, the stream URL, the grammar ID, and the expires in variables as well. It turns out that the stream URL is the one that already contains a WebSocket URL to which we can connect to continuously get the responses from the bot. So all we have to do is use this stream URL, connect to it. This is a WebSocket URL. This is not URL to which we make REST requests, but just connect to this URL and keep reading whatever the stream is going to be sending. So what I'm going to do is going to define a new method in here. This is going to be public async void, let's call this read message. And I'm going to require a couple of things in here before I actually connect to the WebSocket. So the first thing is, of course, a WebSocket. What I will do is define a client that is going to be of type client WebSocket. Need a using directive in here. And I will also need a cancellation token source. So I will create another variable. I'm going to call it CTS. That is going to be a new cancellation token source. And I also need another using directive in here. So with these two variables, now I can connect to the WebSocket. That is going to be an async method. So I'll have to await it, which means, of course, that this is async. So that is why read message is async. And client is going to have a connect async method. All we need in here is a URI. So let me create a new URI in here. And the URI is going to be created through the conversations stream URL. And then it's simply going to require the cancellation token. So we already have the cancellation token source, which has the token property. So there we go. We have this connection. Now what I have to do is, well, I'm actually going to be using some threading in here. I'm going to create a new thread that is going to be all the time until the streaming from the bot ends. And I'm continuously going to be receiving the messages. So let me make an awaitable call to task. I'm going to need a using directive to access task. And let me just start a new task in here. I am going to be using this notation. First of all, I am going to be creating a block of code in here that is going to have the actual execution, but I'm going to pass the token as well at the end. So the same way that we did. And also let me set some things in here. So the creation options is going to be a long running execution. After all, we're constantly going to be requiring the responses from the bot. And finally, let me just get this scheduler as default. Actually, I don't think I selected the correct one. This has to be an asynchronous task. And so what has to happen in this task is that we're constantly going to be searching for messages from the bot. So I will create a while loop in here and I will be requesting the result. So there is a WebSocket receive result. This is going to be the result. And I'm going to have a message that is going to be an array segment of type byte. And I'm going to be initializing this with a new byte array of 4096 bytes. And then what I have to do is, again, keep reading from the stream until it is the end of the stream. So let me do it with a do while loop. And in while, I'm simply going to be evaluating for the end of the message. So as long as it's not the end of the message, we are going to continue doing this. Of course, the result has to be assigned to something. So let me assign it to the received message from the client. Receive async. And the buffer is of course going to be the message. And there is also going to be a cancellation token that we already have in the cancellation token source. So here it is. We already have the result. Now, of course, the result has to be read. Now, before we do that, actually, let me evaluate if the results type is different than text. If it is, we don't know what to do with it, so we're going to break this loop. But if it is text, it means that we are going to be receiving this JSON with the conversation from the bot. So we will be able to, let me get the message bytes and just take apart from this message. So that would mean that I need a using directive to system.link, because link is going to add some extension methods to the array segment. So that means that I can now skip the messages offset, so I can take only the part of the result that I need. So result.count and get this as an array. So I already have an array of bytes here in message bytes. All we have to do is get this as the string. So I'm going to get the bot message in here. All I have to do is use encoding UTF-8 to get the string from this array of bytes. And now bot message is going to contain the message itself. In fact, before getting the message, because let me just call this message JSON, because this is going to be not yet the message from the bot, but the JSON itself. It's going to contain a bit more information than just the response. So before showing you the response, let me go ahead and set a breakpoint in here to show you the JSON, the entire JSON. So what I will do, and by the way, I'm not calling the read message yet. I want to call it after we have created the conversation. So right away, after we create a conversation, I want to start reading messages. Of course, the bot, in the way that we have it, is not going to return anything until we send some message. There may be a scenario where your bot is continuously sending responses for some reason. Ours doesn't. So for ours, we need to send an activity first. But after we send something, read message, this loop is actually going to start receiving some strings. And so we're going to be able to get that message JSON. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to run this on a simulator. And again, of course, right now I'm not receiving anything. Our bot is only going to respond after we send something. So let me just send the same question that we've been using all this time. 32-bit versus 64-bit Windows versions. Send it. And notice that in fact, before we receive the ID from the response with the ID of the current message that we send, we're going to hit the other breakpoint, getting that message JSON. And if we hover over it, we're going to see the response. So let's take a look at this JSON. Let me just show you the JSON in a better format like this. And you can see how it contains an array of activities. So it says that this is coming from the bot, the name of the bot, we have it. We have a conversation ID. So this is pretty much the same kind of activity that we send, but this is coming from the bot. But the important thing in here, notice, is that we have a text, and the text is exactly the same result that we've been seeing so far. The terms 32-bit and 64-bit and so on and so forth, the exact same result that we have seen throughout these lectures when we ask these questions. So after all, this is coming from the exact same place, our Q&A service, the Q&A knowledge base that we already have. So the same result, except this time we are making the request through this WebSocket, which means of course that that string can be displayed in whatever way we want in the user interface. So let me go ahead and click on continue, and you will notice that we received yet another message that is actually going to contain the message that we sent. So the text that we just sent to the bot. Of course, in this case, and by the way, I just noticed we have been forgetting to set the name when we send our message, but we do see that the from, that is us. This is the user1. We didn't really set anything in here for the name, but user1 is the ID that we are setting. So when we send the message over here, the ID for the channel account is user1. So what we can do is evaluate when the activity's ID is user1. In this case, we are not going to be getting the text because that is the text that we sent, not the response from the bot. And after that, we are just going to receive an empty string, so nothing else to evaluate in here. This is the end of the thread, which means that after that and only after that is it that we receive the JSON with the ID when we send the activity. So as you can see, our application already works very well. We are already sending these messages to the bot. We are receiving the messages from the bot. All we have to do is build the interface. So of course, the messages that we send have to appear on the screen because right now nothing is happening. We're not yet displaying the responses from the bot to the user, but we are already receiving them. So starting in the next lecture, we're going to start to build the actual interface for this chat with our bot.